Did China truly sign a $5 billion deal with Burkina Faso to build a gold and diamond processing factory, or just a myth boy news outlets? When people hear the name Burkina Faso, their minds often go straight to words like instability, terrorism, coups, or poverty. After all, this is a nation that has lived through decades of political turmoil, ranked near the bottom of the Human Development Index, and struggled with basic needs like schools, hospitals, and electricity. But here's what many don't know: beneath its dusty earth lies a fortune. Burkina Faso sits on vast deposits of gold, manganese, zinc, copper, and even diamond-bearing formations. These resources are so abundant that by 2021, gold alone made up nearly 80% of the country's exports. And yet, most Burkinabe families barely felt the impact. How could a country that produces so much gold still remain so poor? The answer lies in a story all too common across Africa: foreign domination. For decades, mining giants from Canada, Australia, South Africa, and the UK swooped in, dug out Burkina Faso's wealth, shipped it abroad as raw ore, and left behind scraps, both in revenue and in community development. Imagine exporting billions in gold every year while still struggling to fund textbooks for children or clean drinking water projects. That was Burkina Faso's paradox: rich soil, poor people. Then came a turning point, September 30th, 2022. On that day, a 34-year-old military officer named Captain Ibrahim Troaré seized power in a coup. Instantly, he became the world's youngest head of state. But unlike so many soldiers who came before him, Troaré wasn't interested in simply ruling. He came with a vision. His message was simple but electrifying: Burkina Faso will never again bow to foreign masters. Our resources will serve our people first. One of his clearest pledges? No more raw exports. And unlike empty promises politicians love to make, Troaré backed his words with action. In 2023, Burkina Faso celebrated a historic first: the inauguration of an industrial gold refinery in partnership with Marina Gold. This was no symbolic gesture. With a capacity to refine 400 kilograms per day, around 150 tons annually, Burkina Faso could now process its own gold at home. No longer would every ounce have to travel first to Switzerland, Dubai, or South Africa. For the first time, the value chain began shifting from foreign boardrooms to Ouagadougou's soil. Next came laws requiring mining companies to sell part of their production directly to the Central Bank of Burkina Faso, because gold isn't just a shiny metal, it's one of the world's most secure stores of value. By early 2025, the central bank had already bought 11 tons of gold in a single quarter, adding to reserves that could shield the country against financial shocks, currency crises, or Western sanctions. Then came the boldest move yet. In June 2025, Troaré announced the nationalization of 5 industrial gold mines. These weren't tiny artisanal pits. They were multi-million-dollar operations owned by global players like Endeavour Mining. Almost overnight, they were transferred to the state-owned company Sapamip. For the first time, the Burkinabe people themselves, through their government, became the direct owners of the country's gold wealth. With these steps, Burkina Faso wasn't just exporting raw materials anymore. It was laying the foundation for sovereignty. And that's exactly why the $5 billion rumor caught fire. Because when people heard whispers that China might bankroll a giant gold and diamond processing plant, it didn't sound crazy. It sounded like the next logical step in a revolution already underway. Where did it start? On African blogs, forums, and social media, headlines began spreading. China signs $5 billion deal with Burkina Faso to build gold and diamond factory. At first glance, this looks believable. After all, China has been Africa's largest trading partner for over a decade, pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into infrastructure, energy, and mining. From copper mines in Zambia to diamond projects in Zimbabwe, Beijing has a proven playbook: invest heavily, secure resources, and strengthen diplomatic ties. So when word spread that China might now extend this playbook to Burkina Faso, few blinked. It made perfect sense. China consumes over 30% of the world's gold. And it isn't just about jewelry or luxury. Gold plays a crucial role in China's central bank reserves, in hedging against global currency risks, and even in backing parts of its long-term financial strategy. Diamonds, meanwhile, aren't just for rings, they're essential for industrial tools, electronics, and even military equipment. So yes, China has every reason to want a direct stake in Burkina Faso's untapped potential. But here's the catch. Despite how believable this all sounds, no credible international outlet, Reuters, Bloomberg, AFP, or even Burkina Faso's Ministry of Mines, has confirmed such a deal. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that, as of today, we're dealing with speculation. A rumor born out of the fact that Burkina Faso is clearly positioning itself as Africa's next big mining powerhouse. Fact versus fiction. To separate truth from myth, let's lay out what's actually happening. Asterisk confirmed, Burkina Faso has nationalized mines and started building gold reserves. Asterisk confirmed, it has a functioning industrial refinery. Asterisk confirmed, geological surveys show diamond potential in multiple regions. Asterisk unconfirmed, China has signed a $5 billion deal to build a dual refinery. So the rumor might not be a done deal, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It reflects a trajectory that feels almost inevitable. Even if the $5 billion claim remains unverified, the direction is undeniable. Burkina Faso is building something historic, a model where raw wealth is processed, owned, and managed locally. By controlling production, refining at home, and stockpiling reserves, Traoré's government is proving that Africa doesn't have to stay stuck in the role of supplier for the global north. And that's why this rumor has so much staying power. Because whether it's signed tomorrow or next year, deals like this are the natural outcome of Burkina Faso's mining revolution. Gold might be Burkina Faso's crown jewel for now, but let's talk about the other half of the rumor, diamonds. If you ask most people whether Burkina Faso is a diamond country, they'll probably say no. Unlike Botswana or South Africa, Burkina Faso hasn't made global headlines as a diamond producer. And yet, beneath its soil lies real potential. Geological surveys, including work by the U.S. Geological Survey and research published in academic journals, have confirmed the presence of kimberlite formations, the volcanic rock structures that often host diamonds. These were identified in regions like Gawa, Banfora, and the Muhaun Belt. So far, mining has been mostly artisanal, small pits dug by local workers with little machinery. But here's the key point, the potential is there. And when you combine diamonds with gold, you get a resource package so powerful that it could redefine the country's economy. This is exactly why the Chinese angle makes sense. Imagine Beijing backing a dual processing facility, refining gold on one end and cutting diamonds on the other. Not only would Burkina Faso leapfrog decades of lost opportunities, but China would also secure a direct entry into one of the world's most tightly controlled industries, currently dominated by giants like De Beers. Let's pause for a moment and ask, why China? Why not Europe, America, or even Middle Eastern powers like the UAE? The answer comes down to three powerful reasons. Number 1. Securing supply chains. China knows the global system is fragile. Western sanctions, currency wars, and trade disputes can disrupt access to strategic minerals. By building partnerships directly with African producers, Beijing insulates itself from those risks. A refinery in Burkina Faso would give China privileged access to gold and diamonds, resources it can use both for its economy and for strategic leverage. Number 2. Expanding influence in the Sahel. The Sahel region is becoming one of the most contested geopolitical spaces on Earth. Western troops are leaving. Russia has entered through security partnerships. Turkey is active in infrastructure. For China, entering through mineral partnerships provides a softer, less confrontational way to cement influence. It doesn't send soldiers, it sends engineers, machines, and billions in investment. Number 3. The industrialization agenda. For years, China has promoted its win-win model in Africa. Instead of simply extracting raw resources, it helps build local processing plants. We've seen this in Ethiopia with industrial parks, in Zambia with copper smelters, and in Zimbabwe with lithium plants. A $5 billion refinery in Burkina Faso fits neatly into this narrative, reinforcing the idea that Beijing is helping Africa climb up the value chain. So even though there's no official deal on paper, yet, the logic is undeniable. Of course, China isn't the only major power interested. Enter Russia. Since 2022, Moscow has been steadily expanding its footprint in Burkina Faso and the wider Sahel. While China focuses on economics, Russia plays the security card. In April 2025, the Burkinabe government granted Nordgold, a Russian company, an industrial mining license for the Nayu Gold Project. This single project is projected to yield 20.22 metric tons of gold over 8 years. At the same time, Russia has become a major supplier of military training, weapons, and advisors, part of its broader Sahel strategy after French forces were expelled. This creates an interesting dynamic: China as the economic partner, Russia as the security guarantor, and Burkina Faso as the sovereign decider. For the first time in decades, the country has multiple powerful partners competing to win its favor. That competition could give Ouagadougou the leverage it needs to secure better deals than it ever did with Western companies. To understand why this story matters beyond Burkina Faso, we have to zoom out. Across Africa, a new wave of resource nationalism is rising. Countries are tired of being just exporters of raw materials. Zimbabwe banned the export of raw lithium in 2022, forcing companies to process it locally. Botswana renegotiated its historic diamond contract with De Beers in 2023, ensuring that more profits stay at home. Ghana cracked down on illegal gold smuggling, launched its Gold for Oil initiative, and boosted reserves. Tanzania under late President Magufuli forced foreign miners to pay billions in back taxes and hand over stakes to the government. And in this wave, Burkina Faso is positioning itself as one of the boldest leaders, echoing the revolutionary spirit of Thomas Sankara. Troaré frequently invokes Sankara's dream of African self-reliance, framing every mining reform as not just national policy but part of a pan-African struggle for dignity. That's why the rumor resonates. Because whether or not a $5 billion deal with China is signed tomorrow, the trend is clear. Africa is rising to claim ownership of its resources. Let's play out the scenario. Suppose the headlines tomorrow are true. China and Burkina Faso sign a $5 billion gold and diamond processing deal. What would that mean? Jobs and skills. Tens of thousands of jobs could be created, not only in mining but in refining, logistics, jewelry, and even research. Young Burkinabe engineers could be trained in metallurgy, geology, and industrial design. Over time, Burkina Faso could become a training hub for West Africa. Revenue retention. Billions that used to flow abroad would stay at home. Instead of exporting raw gold bars, Burkina Faso could export finished bullion and certified diamonds, multiplying the value by 2, 3, or even 4 times. Industrial growth. A $5 billion facility wouldn't just process minerals, it could attract related industries, jewelry manufacturing, electronics assembly, and even defense supply chains. Suddenly, Ouagadougou wouldn't just be the capital of a poor country, it could become a regional industrial hub. Geopolitical shifts. Western powers wouldn't sit quietly. Expect pressure campaigns, negative media coverage, and possibly even sanctions to discourage such deals. But for Burkina Faso, standing firm would prove that it has broken free from dependency. Of course, it's not all sunshine. Deals of this size come with risks. Debt dependency. If structured poorly, Burkina Faso could end up owing billions to China, repeating the mistakes of other African nations caught in debt traps. Environmental costs. Large-scale mining and refining can devastate local ecosystems if not carefully managed. The country must avoid trading one form of exploitation for another. Geopolitical tug-of-war. Balancing China, Russia, and the West could be tricky. Too much dependence on one side could limit true sovereignty. This is why, whether the deal is real or not, what truly matters is how Burkina Faso structures its partnerships. At the end of the day, this rumor isn't just about numbers or contracts. It's about symbolism. The fact that people around the world, even without confirmation, find it believable that China could invest $5 billion in Burkina Faso tells us something profound. The perception of Africa is changing. Here's something fascinating. Sometimes, a rumor has more power than the truth. Whether or not Beijing and Ouagadougou have signed a $5 billion deal, the mere idea of it is sending ripples across Africa. Because every African nation rich in minerals is watching. Mali, Niger, Guinea, Ghana, and the DRC all share one reality. They're sitting on enormous resource wealth but struggling to keep the profits at home. Burkina Faso's boldness, combined with a rumor this big, is forcing others to ask, if they can do it, why can't we? Think about Botswana. It took decades of careful negotiation for Gaborone to finally force De Beers to share diamond profits fairly. Now imagine if Burkina Faso could achieve a similar breakthrough in just a few years, with gold and diamonds. That kind of acceleration would light a fire under leaders across the continent. But here's a twist many people don't see. This isn't just an economic story. It's also an information war. Western outlets have mostly ignored the $5 billion rumor. For some, it's too unconfirmed to touch. For others, it's simply inconvenient. Because the more Africans believe that deals like this are possible, the harder it becomes to sustain the old system where raw resources quietly flowed to Western economies. Instead, African social media is doing the job. Platforms like Facebook, X, TikTok, and WhatsApp groups have become megaphones for these stories. Every post, every viral clip about gold, diamonds, or Troaré's speeches chips away at the narrative that Africa must remain dependent. So even if the deal isn't yet real, it's already winning in the battle of imagination. And imagination, as history has shown, can reshape reality. Now, let's ask, what happens if this rumor solidifies into fact? Expect backlash. Western governments, especially France, the EU, and even the US, would likely see a China-Burkina Faso megadeal as a threat. Not just an economic one, but a geopolitical symbol. When Zimbabwe banned raw lithium exports, Western media immediately branded it resource nationalism gone wrong. When Ghana launched gold for oil, critics warned it was unsustainable, even though it reduced fuel costs for ordinary Ghanaians. When Burkina Faso nationalized its mines, think tanks in Europe described it as reckless. If a $5 billion deal lands, expect headlines about Chinese debt traps and loss of sovereignty, even though for decades Western firms drained Africa's resources with little to show for it. The real fight wouldn't just be in contracts or policies. It would be in the court of global opinion. Here's a question worth asking. Does Burkina Faso even need China? Some economists argue that if the government reinvests profits from its newly nationalized mines, it could build smaller-scale refineries with local and regional partners. It wouldn't happen overnight. It might take 5 or 10 years, but it's possible. Regional blocs like ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, or even the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, could play a role. Imagine an African-led gold and diamond processing hub, not dependent on Beijing, Moscow, or Paris. That would be the ultimate form of independence. Of course, that requires unity, discipline, and strong leadership, qualities often tested by political instability. And this is where Troaré's challenge lies. Can he hold the line long enough for Burkina Faso to stand on its own feet? Every move Troaré makes echoes the ghost of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's legendary revolutionary leader assassinated in 1987. Sankara preached self-reliance, banned luxury imports, and encouraged Burkinabe to consume what we produce and produce what we consume. Now, nearly 40 years later, his words feel alive again. A gold refinery, nationalized mines, and a rumor of a $5 billion deal, all of it seems like a modern extension of Sankara's unfinished project. But Sankara's story also carries a warning. His boldness made him enemies, both inside and outside Burkina Faso. His assassination was a lesson in how global powers react when African leaders threaten entrenched systems. Troaré knows this. And every new reform he pushes, whether confirmed or rumored, tests how far Burkina Faso can go before history tries to repeat itself. Let's not lose sight of the real question. How does this affect the people of Burkina Faso? If a $5 billion factory were to rise in Ouagadougou, it wouldn't just be about geopolitics. A farmer's son in Banfora might become a trained diamond cutter instead of leaving for Europe. A young woman in Ouagadougou might work in a jewelry factory instead of an informal mine. Communities that once saw their gold shipped out in secrecy could finally see schools, hospitals, and roads funded by their own resources. For ordinary Burkinabe, the rumor is more than news. It's hope. And hope, in a country battered by years of insecurity and hardship, is priceless. So where does this leave us? If the rumor is false, it shows the hunger for change is so strong that people will believe in billion-dollar deals even without evidence. If the rumor is premature, it may simply be pointing to a future that's already on the horizon. And if the rumor is true, or becomes true, then we may be witnessing the start of one of the most dramatic economic shifts in African history. Either way, the message is clear: Burkina Faso is no longer invisible. It has entered the stage of global resource politics, and the world is watching closely. Here's the irony. The West once mocked Burkina Faso as powerless, poor, and dependent. But today, a single rumor from this small landlocked nation is enough to spark debates in boardrooms, ministries, and think tanks around the globe. That is power. And it reminds us that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin not with official documents, but with whispers, rumors, and the belief that something better is possible. So whether the $5 billion China-Burkina Faso deal is signed tomorrow, next year, or never at all, one fact remains. The balance of power in Africa's mining sector is already shifting. No longer is Burkina Faso seen as just another poor, unstable country. It's being discussed in the same breath as global powers. It's becoming a stage where the future of Africa's sovereignty is being written. So let's come full circle. We started with a rumor: China signs $5 billion gold and diamond deal with Burkina Faso. Asterisk, is it confirmed? Asterisk, is it possible? Absolutely. Asterisk, does it matter? Asterisk, more than you think. Because this isn't just about one deal. It's about a continental revolution. It's about Africa finally daring to say, no more raw exports. No more exploitation. No more waiting for permission. And whether it's through China, Russia, or entirely homegrown initiatives, Burkina Faso is showing that even the smallest nations can shake the global order when they claim control of their destiny. Here's the real treasure in this story. Not the gold, not the diamonds, not even the $5 billion. The true treasure is the mindset shift. Burkina Faso is teaching us that sovereignty isn't handed down, it's taken. And in that act of taking, it inspires a continent. So whether this $5 billion deal is signed tomorrow or never at all, remember this: the balance of power is already shifting. And Ouagadougou, against all odds, is one of the places leading the charge. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe so you don't miss more deep dives into Africa's unfolding revolution. And let me know in the comments. Do you think Burkina Faso should trust China with such a deal? Or should it focus on building this dream entirely on its own?